everyone. How are you? That is hard to follow. Good to see you all. Listen, we are going to jump right in today to Matthew chapter 25, so please get there in a hurry. Grab a Bible. You can follow along on YouVersion, or get your glasses on and read the screens, but get there right away. I know it's a lot of pressure this early in the message, but I believe in you. You can do it. Get there. All right, so we're going to be in Matthew 25, verse 14, and we're right in the middle of where Jesus is telling several stories to his disciples, to his followers, about what the kingdom of God looks like. So, Matthew 25, verse 14. Again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. He called together his servants and entrusted his money to them while he was gone. He gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities. He then left on his trip. The servant who received the 5 bags of silver began to invest the money and earned 5 more. The servant with the 2 bags of silver also went to work and earned 2 more. But the servant who received the 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground and hid the master's money. After a long time, their master returned from his trip and called them to give an account of how they had used his money. The servant to whom he had entrusted the 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, "Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 5 more." The master was full of praise. "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together." The servant who had received the 2 bags of silver came forward and said, "Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 2 more." The master said, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together." Then the servant with the 1 bag of silver came back and said, "Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here's your money back." But the master replied, "You wicked and lazy servant. If you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it." Then he ordered, "Take the money from the servant and give it to the one with the 10 bags of silver." All right. Put a pin in that. We'll get back to that in a minute. So the last time I was up here, I told you about how I have been obsessed with words since I was a little girl, right? And how my entire life, this particular brand of nerdery, led me to fill journals and collect quotes and be published in local newspapers as a child. And then I told you about how I went to ASU and I graduated with a journalism degree in 2003, intent on pursuing writerly things with my life because people told me that I had a gift and I believed them. But what I didn't tell you is that about a year later in 2004, when life got insane, I did something absurd with my gifts. I buried it. I just buried it. Yep, we had a first son, and then 4 months later, we got pregnant again. Then we moved from Arizona to Minnesota, and I just stopped writing. True to my if I can't do it all really well kind of personality, maybe some of you can relate, and I won't do it at all, I buried that gift in the Minnesota soil and let winter have her way with it for more than half a decade. And you know that soil freezes. Oh sure, I still wrote circles around people at Christmas card time, and I even rallied a bunch of people around a small adoption blog we started when we were adopting our daughter from Ethiopia. But other than that, forget about it. I stopped pursuing opportunities to be published. I threw all of my creative juices into a blender, mixed them up, and came out a photographer, because that made sense. Started this little side hustle photography business, and the best part is I even went so far as to tell my boss, I was communications director at the time, and I told my boss she was going to have to hire someone else to do the writing part of my job because I was over it. Like a director of communications who doesn't write, like that made sense, but she went for it. So that's on her. So I could blame all the babies we had, I could blame all the moving around we did. Or I could really blame the insanity that was living through Ryan's seminary experience while all of this was going on. But the truth is that it was just far easier to shrink back and to bury my gift than it was to invest it. And I got to a point where I preferred that. Like, it was just easier. And then in 2011, when God moved our family from Minnesota to Las Vegas to start a church out of nothing, I thought, I should probably write some of this down. I should probably start blogging about this experience. So I did what everyone does. I bought a domain name, and I started writing again. And the truth was, though, I was really just writing from the margins of my day. I wasn't really focused on it and investing in it like I should have been. But then in the summer of, it would have been 2013, a few people I have a crazy amount of respect for who know me really well, they started, kicking at the dirt above the gift that I had buried. And they started saying some really bossy, audacious things to me that I didn't really want to hear, like, you should write more. And the most ludicrous thing someone said to me was, yeah, like a book. And I was like, you were right. And so after I got finished rolling my eyes, I knew that I was busted. Like, I had dirt on my hands, and I knew it. And so by that summer, I was finally able to confess to Ryan that I was a writer who didn't write. And that as such, I was perhaps being a teensy bit disobedient with what I had been given to do in this world. So I told him I needed 3 weeks and a large handful, of uninterrupted hours to see for sure. Then I grabbed a shovel, figuratively, and I started writing. And by September, I had unearthed a 15-page book proposal and 3 sample chapters without breaking a sweat.
Nice. Wow.
Like, it came so natural. It was like breathing. The hours flew by. I was so full of life. So why? Why did I bury that gift for all those years? Why did the third man in this passage bury his? Why maybe have you buried yours? Or one of yours? Well, if we are going to get serious about taking this quitting thing we've been talking about around here the last few weeks to one more level and to say, I quit shrinking back, we are going to have to answer those questions. We are going to have to ask ourselves why, and we are going to have to deal with what we find there when we answer those questions. So that's what we're going to do today. Lucky you. I already did it. So why do we shrink back? There's a lot of reasons, but from this parable, this story in particular, I see 3 reasons that Jesus points to. Sometimes we shrink back and we bury our gifts because we assume things about God that aren't true. Look at verse 24. The servant with the 1 bag of silver came and said, Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. The Message version translates it like this. It says, I know you have high standards and hate careless ways, that you demand the best and you make no allowances for error. Okay, where is this guy getting his intel, is what I want to know. Does the rest of the Bible say that God is demanding, that he's overbearing, that he's ungracious? No. The Bible says that we serve a God who is merciful, who is slow to anger, who is filled with unfailing love. He is the God who gives grace to the humble and who is patient, so very patient, for our sakes.
Thank you, Lord.
Ephesians 1:7 says, He is so rich in kindness and grace that he purchased our freedom with the blood of his Son and forgave our sins. The servant with the 1 bag of silver, he just got it wrong. He was so caught up in thinking that the master was against him that he left no room for the possibility, for the truth, that the master was very much for him, and that the bag of silver he had been given, it was given to him as a gift to be invested, not a burden to be shouldered. So when we assume things about God that aren't true, we start believing things about ourselves and about the way we should live that aren't true either.
Come on.
And that is a big old danger zone. It just is, because what it does is it sends us down paths we weren't supposed to go down because we're believing something about God that isn't true. And we shrink back and we bury that which was given to us to invest because we just don't want to screw up, make God mad. This is exactly what happened to Lynn Hybels 15 years after she and her husband started one of the most influential churches America has ever seen. We're going to look a lot at her story today. So what happened was, early on, Lynn was able to bring her passion for social work and caring for the marginalized into the church, but somewhere along the way, she lost her zeal for all of that, and she buried her gifts. Like, they just got buried beneath the demands of motherhood, a rapidly growing church, supporting her husband's career. I mean, she wrote this guy's books. Like, she was doing everything. And so at age 39, this is so sad, she found herself severely depressed and in crisis mode, unable to figure out how to value herself and her gifts in the midst of her husband's very busy career, very public life. And her life just flat out fell apart spiritually, emotionally, relationally, physically. As a result of believing that she had to live a script that was never written for her to live, all because she held this deeply rooted and wrong assumption about God. So here's what she had to say about it. She said, I went to this counselor, and this counselor helped me go back in my life to the roots of who I was. And as I went back and explored some of the realities of my childhood, I realized two things that were really significant. Number one, I had a really toxic relationship with God. I became a Christian when I was a little girl, but the God of my childhood was a demanding taskmaster whose favor I had to earn every day. So I was constantly on treadmills of perfectionism, performance, and busyness, thinking I had to keep running in order to earn God's favor. And you know, at age 39, I was just exhausted. I was done. I couldn't do it anymore. And so I knew I had to get off these treadmills. I had to slow down. But the unrelenting God of my childhood wouldn't let me do it. I'll tell you more about her story in a minute. But can you hear how Lynn's inaccurate understanding of God sent her down this wrong path and drove her to an unmanageable life of people-pleasing and perfectionism and performing? I mean, maybe you hear yourself in some of what she was saying. And so sometimes we shrink back and we do absurd things like bury our gifts because we assume things about God that just aren't true. And if that's you today, like, thank you for being here, because this is where it starts to kind of unravel that ball of stuff, that knot. Like, I look at it sometimes like a knot in a necklace that you can't get out. But you need to start unraveling it, and being here and being in a group and hearing the truth about who God really is awesome. And so thank you for being here and for working that out. The second reason we shrink back is because we're afraid. The man in verse 25 said he was afraid he would lose his master's money, so that's why he hid it in the earth. Lynn was afraid that she would lose God's favor if she stepped off all those treadmills. I was afraid, I think I didn't have the time or the energy to do the thing well, like perfect, so I'm just not going to do it. But if we make a misstep, or if we don't use what we've been given perfectly, or in exactly the right ways, are we really going to lose God's favor? No. Ryan walked us through this a couple of weeks ago when we decided we were going to quit living in fear. Remember Romans 8:38? And I am convinced that nothing can ever separate us from God's love. Neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither our fears for today or our worries about tomorrow. Not even the powers of hell can separate us from God's love.
Amen.
You know, Ryan said that nothing can separate you from God's love when you make the decision to love and follow Jesus, the Master. If God's love is always present in your life, you have nothing to fear. But stay with me on this. We aren't just afraid that we're going to get it wrong, are we? Sometimes I think we are afraid we're going to get it right. Like, have you ever secretly suspected and hoped that that little bag of treasure you've been given could actually be awesome? Like, you could use it to do something big in this world, but you kind of get afraid that that kind of hope might be selfish or turn out to be really self-serving. You wonder if starting the thing or investing the time or pursuing the dream is about making your name great instead of about making God's name great. And so you shrink back because you don't want to be that kind of Christian. You don't want to do stuff that's just going to draw attention to yourself. So you're afraid of getting it wrong, and you're afraid that you're going to make it about building your kingdom instead of God's. And so you decide it's better to shrink back because maybe using my gift in that way isn't really what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I don't think I'm really supposed to be doing that. And so you're just afraid. And those are healthy fears. But let me ask you this. If we were created to shrink back when we're afraid or we're unsure, then why does the master go berserk on the man at the end who didn't do anything with his gift? Why does he call him wicked for not doing anything with it? And also, why, if we think, okay, we're just created to play it small and shrink back, why in John 14:12 does it say that whoever believes in Jesus is going to do even greater things than Jesus did? I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I say maybe it's because we're supposed to do great things with the great gifts that God has put inside of us while we wait for the master to come back.
All right.
We don't have to be afraid of getting it wrong or getting it right. We can go for it because grace will be there around it and through it. So the third reason we shrink back, and this is deep, guys, is because we're lazy. We are lazy. Uh-oh is right. Verse 26, but the master replied, "You wicked and lazy servant. You knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate. Why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it." Sometimes, you guys, like this guy, we are just straight up lazy. We would rather dismiss our gifts as not very important than do the hard work of doing something important with them. We'd rather make excuses for our shrinking back instead of leaning headfirst into our giftedness. Honestly, we would rather dig a hole than take a step.
All right.
It's just easier. We know where the hole is. We're not quite sure where that step's going to take us.
That's right.
We'd rather dig a hole than take a step, and we're lazy. Now, are there seasons and are there circumstances in life that require us to throttle back? Of course. But when opportunities come to multiply what God has entrusted to us, we have to do something. God gives us gifts, and He gives us grace, and He entrusts us with things that are to be invested. If we don't mobilize them, then we're just digging a hole and burying the things He's given us to offer this world. We're being irresponsible and lazy, and that does not lead us to anywhere God wants us to go. Proverbs 19, verse 15 says that laziness induces deep sleep, and a lazy person will go hungry. It's hard to eat if you're sleeping all the time. Some of you here today are sleepwalking through your lives and slowly starving to death. Not because you haven't been handed a bag of gifts, but because you are sitting on them while Netflix counts down to the start of the next episode.
All right.
Okay? I'm sorry if that hits some of you there, but it's true. We're lazy. It's easier. It's easier to say, yeah, Netflix. Okay, so we gotta get up off the couch, guys. So what are we gonna do about it? If we're gonna raise our right flags and say, I quit shrinking back, we're gonna have to get up, start walking, and do a few things. The first thing we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to look back. Not at the remote. We're gonna have to look back Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so that we can do the good things He planned for us long ago." God created you on purpose, with a purpose, for a purpose.
Yes.
The treasure you buried, or the one that you let someone else cover up,
Okay.
it's been there all along. And I bet you can trace it back to your childhood. Just like Lynn Hybels eventually did. Listen to this. She says, "Fortunately, I got good advice to look back at who I was as a child. And I realized when I was 7 years old, if you asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would say, well, I want to work with the poor. And then I went to college to be a social worker. So it was really not hard to see what my natural inclination was. But that is not what I lived out as a pastor's wife. During this era of reclaiming my true self, I had an opportunity to go down to Mexico and visit an orphanage that we were partnering with. And I so clearly remember sitting down there in the dirty field, passing out canned peaches to little kids, thinking, I feel at home here. I feel more at home here than I have felt in my nice home in Barrington, Illinois for years. And I thought, this is what I have to pay attention to. Do you remember in Luke chapter 2, when Mary and Joseph are coming home from the Passover festival in Jerusalem, and they lose their pimple-faced 12-year-old named Jesus? Do you remember this? This is one of my favorite passages of all the Bible. Okay. Do you remember where they found him?
Temple.
3 days later, they finally discovered him, Jesus, in the temple, sitting among the religious teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. His parents didn't know what to think. "Son," his mother said to him, "why have you done this to us? Your father and I have been frantic, searching for you everywhere." Okay, stop right there. I don't care what kind of meltdown you had as a parent this morning with your kids, but you did not lose the Son of God for 3 days. So you are doing okay. I mean, I love this is in the Bible. It's so fantastic. They lose the Savior of the world for 3 days. So come on, just give yourself some grace with whatever happened in the minivan before you came in. Okay, so then what does Jesus say though? Little 12-year-old Jesus. I think he had to have had a little teenage snark, a little. "But why did you need to search?" he asked. "Didn't you know that I must be in my Father's house?" "Mom, Dad, chill. Didn't you know I was just here doing what one of the things God put me on this earth to do, which is teach people?" Like, calm down. So here's the thing, Jesus, he was doing his thing at 12. He was doing his thing at 12. And Lynn, she was doing her thing at 7. I was doing my thing at 10. What were you doing? What was your thing? When you were young, look back. Some of you are going to have to look a lot farther back than others of you. And if you're young here right now, look around. Like, what are you passionate about right now? Right? What are the things you've always loved to do? The things that others ask you to do because you're really good at them? What are your talents and passions? Those things that come up over and over again when you look back over your life. What are those things in your life that have never been passing fads? What are those dreams that you just haven't been able to shake? What are some things that God has brought you through or brought you from? And what has he taught you along the way that you might be able to share with others?
Come on.
That's your thing, guys.
All right.
That's your gift. It's been there all along. So quitting shrinking back starts by looking back. The second thing we need to do to get serious about getting out of the shrinking back game and digging up those gifts we may have buried is to look around. Now, I do not mean look around like compare yourselves to others. We quit that 3 weeks ago, did we not? If you didn't, go back and listen to the message and get started on that. No, what I mean is that we need, once you have some idea what our gifts are, we need to look around and see where they could possibly fit into what's going on in the world. And there's a lot going on in the world, so choose something. Theologian Frederick Buechner says that the place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. The place God calls you to is that place where your passions and your talents and your gifts line up with something going on in this broken world. It's going to look different for everybody, which is the beauty of it. For Lynn, this meant taking her lifelong passion for social work and social justice and women and children and investing it into ministry partnerships that were meeting a deep need that she looked around and saw. Here's what she said. I became convinced that women are the greatest untapped resource in the world. If you look at all the great global tragedies, they disproportionately impact women. People in poverty, the majority are women and children. Refugees, the majority are women and children. Who is the target in trafficking? The majority of them are children. Who bears the brunt of violent conflict? It's the women and the children. And so what that says to me is that women and children need to be disproportionately engaged on the solution side. We need to partner with our global sisters and help them carry their burdens. And our global sister may live right next door. May live in her house, as she found, as she was caring for her dying mother. I mean, the globe starts here, she says, and it expands from there. So Lynn quit shrinking back, and she spent much of her 40s and her 50s not at home in Barrington, Illinois, but actively engaged on the solutions side in ministry partnerships in under-resourced communities in Latin America and Africa. Since 2009, she's partnered with local churches in the Congo that are caring for women who have been brutally raped and are initiating peacemaking efforts in their villages. She's also circled the globe to learn from and resource Jews, Muslims, Christians, Israelis, Palestinians who are working for dignity, security, and freedom for all the people in the Holy Land. And she did all of this as a result of finally having the nerve to ask God, what is mine to do in this whole big world of sorrows? What is mine to do? God, what do you want me to do to help bring your kingdom to earth? So look around. What's yours to do in this big world of sorrows? And what's yours to do does not have to take you around the world or up onto a stage. But can it take you across the street to that neighbor who's lonely? Can it take you here across the aisle to someone who is in a different life stage than you, who doesn't look like you? Can it take you across the hall at work to that coworker that's having a bad day? Kids, can it take you across the playground or across the cafeteria to that kid who is again eating lunch alone? Just look around. You'll see what you need to do, and ask God for it too. He'll show you. He'll open your eyes to see that. Finally, if we're going to quit shrinking back and invest our gifts, we are going to need to be faithful. Once we've discovered what's ours to do, what's ours to invest, we need to start doing it. We need to be faithful in investing it, because when we do, we'll be given more to do. Let's go back one more time to Matthew chapter 25, verse 21, and look at how the master responds to the men who actually did something with the bags they were handed. The master was full of praise. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. Some translations say, come, be my partner, and share in my joy. I want that. I don't know about you, but that's what I want. I want to faithfully spend my life on the things the master has given me to do. And here's the thing, if we each are faithful with what God has given us to do, this is how Genesis Church becomes a thriving community of changed lives, changing lives. This is how it happens, and we cannot shrink back from that. Can't. Writer Marianne Williamson says, we ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest, to make known the glory of God that's within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone.
Yes, it is.
And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give others, people, the permission to do the same. We are liberated from our own fear, and our presence automatically liberates others. When we quit shrinking back and become willing to do the work of unearthing our gifts and investing them where we can, others will too. And that is how the world changes.
Yes.
That is how captives are set free. And parents, a quick word to you. One of the greatest gifts that you can give your children is to let them see you fully alive, to let them see you with dirt on your hands, not from burying your something, but from digging your something up and boldly offering it back to God. And for all of us, it's gonna be hard, and it's not gonna be free, and your hands are gonna bleed a little. But you know what? In the digging and in the unearthing, you will be living fully alive. You'll be doing what you were meant to do, what you've been given to do, and what this battered yet beautiful world is crying out for you to do. And here is the best part, and we're going to end here. You won't just be doing it for the Master. You will be doing it with him.
Yes.
The one who, when he was told that his gift to the world was going to be that he was going to have to die for it, he didn't shrink back. You will be doing it with Jesus, the Master who leaned headfirst into that calling so that you and I could grab hold of what's ours to do in this big world of sorrows and make manifest, make known his glory in the world. So we are going to stop shrinking back and we're going to do it, okay? Let's do it. All right. And let's pray. God, wow, we are so thankful that you are kind and gracious and creative enough to give us each gifts to invest this side of heaven. Forgive us for the times we've taken them for granted, and especially for the times we've taken out our shovels and we've covered them right up. Forgive us for forgetting that we just don't have gifts. We are gifts to each other, to the world. We don't want to shrink back anymore, God. We want to shine, and we want to serve, and we want to show the world that Jesus reigns and that we are his. Give us the courage to grab onto what's ours to do, even if it seems small today. May we be willing to do our own small things well and present those things as an offering. And like the servants who used what the Master gave them, God, may we remember that it's just our job to invest. Your job is to multiply. Thank you for always, always being with us as we build our lives upon your love. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.